Welcome to this session with Lead with Tech. A brief intro about Lead with Tech before we get into today's topic. Lead with Tech is basically a channel which is focused on helping every techie to build the skills that is needed to have the ability to lead an organization, a team, or a project, or even as an individual to lead with the technical skills. And today's session is focused around prompt and prompt engineering related topics, and you're basically trying to understand how you use write a prompt which is optimized to give you an output which is relevant and accurate and with the highest level of accuracy. So what we will start with is we'll understand a use case or a scenario where we typically use a prompt, and then go ahead and look at the output it provides, and finally optimize the prompt to see the benefit the 5W strategy that we are talking about helps with. So to begin with, let's go ahead and understand the concepts as well as the details around that. So today's agenda would be basically to understand what you expect out of this session, right? And then understand the basic fundamentals of a prompt and the structure that is needed in a prompt. And before we get deep dive into the 5W strategy that we're talking about, we will understand each and every component of a 5W. How does it relate to the prompt basic blocks? And then look at a real example where you take a prompt and go ahead and optimize that using the 5W strategy. So it will be a bit of hands-on at the beginning to see your existing prompt, and then take it, optimize it, and then try it again with a new prompt. So during the session, feel free to put up a chat or share your prompt, which we will try to optimize it during the prompt engineering, the 5W strategy that we are talking about. Right? So let's start with the session with what to expect. So at the outset, this session is not about prompt engineering, or it doesn't talk about the engineering concepts of how do you write a prompt, how do you optimize it, or how do you use these engineering skills, right? But this 5W strategy is all about the basic common sense and logical approach towards achieving it. So the knowledge of prompt engineering concepts which you hear will help, but this is something that will help you to apply the strategy in a matter of 5 minutes or even a few minutes as you gain knowledge or apply this more, and help you to optimize the prompt in a matter of few minutes to get the result they're looking for. And though we are talking about GitHub Copilot based prompts here, the 5W strategy can be applied for any prompts, any copilots, from sales copilot to from Office Copilot to GitHub Copilot, or anywhere you're writing a prompt, 5W strategy will help you to optimize it while in a matter of few minutes, right? So look at this as an add-on to what you already know about prompts. If you've gone through prompt engineering, this is an add-on on top of it, right? So, and this is something, as I said, something you can apply immediately in your work starting tomorrow. So what are the key benefits of a 5W strategy, right? One is, as I said, this you can apply in a matter of 5 minutes and optimize your prompt, right? You need not spend, you have your story, you have a requirement, you write a prompt, use this strategy to quickly optimize it and rewrite your prompt based on that. And it basically covers, or it looks at 5 category of questions that you need to ask given a requirement, given a prompt. Right? And you will use those 5 category of questions and various questions related to the requirement, and then try to apply that into a prompt to define your optimized prompt, right? And with this strategy, what the expectation is, currently if you're writing a prompt and you're not getting the results you're looking at, using this strategy you'll be able to improve your productivity by at least 4 to 5x, saying that the code, in this case the code that you get or the output you get from a copilot is more optimized to give you that 4x to 5x productivity, which directly can showcase in the work or in the delivery that you're doing. So it is 5 minutes, 5 questions, or 5 category of questions, and 5 productivity is what you get out of a 5W strategy. Now, before we get into a prompt optimization, right? Now, with respect to GitHub Copilot, what is a prompt, right? A prompt is something where if you're working with another developer, other team, a prompt is something you tell another developer what you are looking for the developer to do, right? So in a GitHub Copilot, the prompting could be you are asking the other developer to write code or write new code based on the existing structure of the code or the requirement, or you're basically asking the other developer to help you understand the code which is written probably before you joined or as part of another module, right? And you will also use your other code developers to help you test the functionality that you have written or somebody else has written, right? And finally, when you're testing it, you need the test data, right? How do you ask your test engineer, test automation engineer, or anybody else to create the test data that you need for this, right? So now in each of this scenario, imagine instead of a developer, you have the GitHub Copilot. So whether we are working with another developer or a Copilot, you're basically asking the Copilot to help you write new code, help you understand existing code, help you test a code. Now testing could be unit testing, functional testing, any other testing, and finally generate the data that you need to do your testing, right? So when we say a prompt in GitHub Copilot, in most cases you will be asking one of these four as a prompt, right? Now let's look into a particular user story that we will consider for the rest of this session. So take a scenario where you have a story where as a user I want to be able to list all the active orders in the table so that I can easily view their status and make informed delivery decisions. Now this is a user story that you get from your product manager or product owner or a scrum master, right? Now here there is no let's assume for the sake of this session there is no backend API, there is no front-end UI. You're going to write end-to-end as a full stack engineer. So the first thing you will be going ahead is defining the understanding more about this requirement. Now it talks about listing active orders and listing in such a way that decisions can be made faster, right? That's what is the story. So it helps the end user, which could be your delivery team, to understand to react to a order quickly than later, right? So now if this is a user story and assuming you're going to use GitHub Copilot, right? Now what could be the typical prompt that you write to begin with, right? So the prompt that now maybe put up a comment in the video in the down below, or put your prompt here so that you can take the same prompt, apply 5W and optimize at the end of the session. So what is the prompt you're going to, what comes to your mind for this user story? What is the prompt? Now it could be you could write only for API, only for backend, front end, that's up to you, but write a prompt, put it as a comment so that I can help you to optimize it during the session or after the session, right? Now what immediately came to my mind when I wrote this story and I'm trying to figure out how do I quickly, if I'm trying to write a prompt, what is the first prompt I would write, right? Now a first prompt I would write would look like this, right? Can you generate a C# code to show a list of orders? Maybe I may optimize it by saying that can you generate a C# code to show a list of orders which are only active or which are sorted by active. So I may add some more details around that, but this is a prompt that typically a developer who has not yet mastered GitHub Copilot would write, right? So can you generate a C# code which is specific? You are asking it to generate a C# code and you're asking it to list the orders, right? Now before we go ahead and then see how to optimize this, what are the approach, let's try this live with a GitHub Copilot, right? So here I have Visual Studio open. I'm writing in .NET code. Technology doesn't matter. It could be Java, Python, any language. But the idea is to look at the prompting side of it. So here I said, can you generate a C# code to show a list of orders, right? So this is the prompt which you saw in the slide. I picked it up. Now I'm going to say execute. So I have on the right hand side, you notice I have a basic MVC project with controllers, models and everything built. Now I have this code which it is getting generated. Now what it has generated is I have the model called order, which is taking the order ID, product name, quantity, and it is generated the program.cs file where I have the main function with list of orders, dummy orders which are added, and it is looping through that. Now this might be a good response from a Copilot, but can you use this in a production environment? No, right? You cannot take this, copy this, and then take it into production, and then at least give it to your testing team, right? So this code, though it is good to see it is generated the code, you may end up spending more time rewriting this code than actually generating. So the feedback could be, it's better I write the code than use Copilot, right? So now how do you take this prompt and then write or rewrite this prompt to get a more optimized response where may not be 100% but maybe 60, 70, 80% of the code you can reuse, right? So let's look at how do you achieve that using the 5W strategy. Now, how do you optimize the prompt using 5W? Is before getting into that 5W concept, you need to understand the 5 or the basic building blocks of a prompt, right? Any prompt that you write should have an objective, right? What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve a very simple list of orders? Are you trying to achieve a UI code? Are you trying to achieve an API? So you need to understand the clarity on the objective. And the second is, what are the requirements, right? Requirements could be, are you trying to connect to an API which is an existing API? Is it being built or is it already being built? You just have to build the UI, or what is the requirement? What is the performance requirement? What is the list of, if you're saying list, how many records I need to return? So these are the requirements of that particular story. And the context is very critical. When we say, we typically talk about prompt, but we rarely talk about context, right? The response of a prompt directly depends on the context you give, right? The relevancy of a prompt depends on the context. The more context you give, the more relevant it is. And the context is something that you build as you build your sprints. In every sprint, the context has to be updated so that the developers can use the context to generate the code. We'll get to the how to manage the context in a sprint level, right? We'll get to that at the end of this session. So context is a key part of a prompt response, right? Without a context, no matter how optimized you write, you may not get the output that you're looking for. And finally, what is the outcomes you're looking for? Now, outcome could be technology outcome, like I'm looking for a .NET code, Java code, or Node.js, or I'm looking for a unit testing or exception handling. So what is the outcome you're looking for this prompt? Now, the user story that we saw, we may not be able to get all the code in one prompt. You'll be writing multiple prompts to generate the code for the complete feature. Now, so what is the outcome of each and every prompt? What is the outcome of this particular prompt you're writing? How do you get to the final prompt, right? So how do you get to the final state where you have the code which you can then optimize, fine tune, and send it off for testing, right? So whether it's objective, requirements, context, and the outcome, right? The context and the outcome you're looking for plays a major role as compared to objective and requirement. Objective and requirement will help you to understand what you're trying to achieve, but our context and outcome is what makes you the prompt response very relevant. Now let's understand what is the context, right? Now this is an approach which I think makes sense when it comes to writing a context. Now, one thing you need when you're defining a context for a prompt or a set of prompts or context for your team who are using GitHub Copilot is, what is the scope of this project, of this enterprise, or for this team, or for this sprint, or for the individual developer. So the clarity on what are you trying to achieve is one. Then you need to add the domain context. What if you're working in a logistics domain, if you're working in an insurance domain, if you're working in a manufacturing domain, there are some standard set of rules, standard set of standards like a, or what you will follow, right? That should be part of your context. The domain of your company, of your industry, domain of your can be part of it, right? So next is an enterprise context. The customer you're working for, the company you're working for has a context of building this application over a period of time. So what that context of what is the coding standards, what is the databases they use, what is the naming conventions they use. So that can be part of the enterprise context that you're going to write into a system, into a for the prompt to respond, right? And finally, the technical context. So the technical context is more about what is the tech stack, what packages to use, what packages not to refer, whether it's new .NET, NuGet packages, or Java, which has its own packages, Python. So what packages to allow, what packages not to allow, what is the security considerations, what is the vulnerability that to be taken care in generating the code, or if you want your prompt to refer to an existing code which is very well written, you can give it as a technical context. So a context which plays a major role in the response of a prompt needs to be having the clarity in the context of your project, the domain, the industry you're working for, the context, the standards of that particular industry, the enterprise context, which could be your company or the customer you're working for, and the technical context of the project, right? Now this context need not be very specific to a story. It, as I said, it is something that you build as a team and manage it every sprint, right? So the context gets updated as you see, with the whole idea of how do you increase the productivity to 80 to 90 or maybe 100%, right? The context which you're going to build over a period of sprints will help you to achieve that productivity that we are all looking for with the Copilot, right? So with this context, with the detailing of the context, again, how this is managed, I'm going to cover at the end of this. Now, if you're not yet done, go ahead and think of some prompts, put it in the comments, which I can then come back to you with optimization in the upcoming videos, right? Now, the core of it, the 5W strategy, right? So the 5W is what I'm looking at. Any prompts, any way you write a prompt, irrespective of its GitHub Copilot, Sales Copilot, Office Copilot, or a prompt with ChatGPT, anywhere you'll be able to apply this strategy and get an optimized prompt in a matter of few minutes, right? And as more you apply, the more faster effective you become, right? And it's something that varies for every prompt, for every story, for every prompt. It varies. So the idea is to see how do you understand and apply it on an ongoing basis, right? So the first, or the 5W, what stands for is first, what, right? So what are we trying to achieve here, right? So are we what we aim to achieve as an objective or the outcome of the task, right? So are we trying to say basically the what question of the story, right? What are we trying to achieve? What is the scope? What is the clarity that we need, and various other factors that is needed, right? So anywhere when you say you're building a list of orders, right? A list of orders that we get. So the what questions is what comes into picture, right? The first thing you need to ask those 5-10 questions, the what, right? Next is the why. Why are we doing this? Who is going to get benefited? Why? The questions directly gives the clarity on the requirement, the background of the story, and the purpose of what we are trying to achieve. And why also tells you how it is integrated with other systems or various other categories, right? So the what tells you the objective and the outcome. The why tells you the clarity that you need in a requirement, right? And next is a when, which is probably the triggering point. When is it getting triggered? Who is triggering it? Which system is triggering? Which user is triggering? Which is application which is triggering? So all the when questions, and when should the response be managed, or various questions around when gives you what is known as what specific conditions that you need to take care in your code, or what you need to give as an input so that the prompt can generate. And next is the where conditions, right? Where is your data? Where do you want the data to be stored? How do you connect? Is it in cloud? Is it SQL database? No SQL? or some other system, some third party system. So where questions typically revolves around the data and the data flow, right? For a story, the where question you will ask data related questions. What questions is more about what I'm trying to do with this user story, why I'm trying to do, who is going to get benefited, when this will be triggered, who will trigger it, various scenarios, is it scheduled trigger or various, and finally the way. Way is there are any user story you take, any technical implementation, there are hundreds of ways of doing it, right? So what is the way that you have chosen? What is the way that you have to choose based on the project context and the project's skills and project code and the team, right? So the idea is to achieve understand the ways which will help you to directly trigger understand the technology or the packages or the coding side of it. So the 5W stands for what, why, when, where, and way. Now let's deep dive into this a bit, right? And then how we saw 5 questions here, right? What, why, when, where, and way, right? Now how does these answers to the question relate to the prompt, right? So what I have seen in many places is the what, why, and when directly gives you the context that you want, right? Or that you want to update in the project or in this particular file. So the 3 answers to these 3 questions, what, why, and when, gives you the context, and the 2 other questions, where and way, gives you the requirement that you need to answer or to get you the responses that you need with respect to the code or the test data or the testing or the understanding. So the what, why, and when is the context. Where and way gives you the requirement for the prompt to be written, right? So you need to look at these 5 questions and accordingly manage it to show as a context or as a requirement in a prompt. So you decide based on the answers that you get. And 5W is something that you can quickly apply, put a whiteboard, you can whiteboard it and write a prompt, right? So now let's apply this to go ahead and use it for optimizing our story, our prompt, right? As a user, I want to be able to list down all the active orders, right? We saw this at the beginning. So the what question, as I said, focuses on the scope of the requirement, the clarity that you're looking for, the limitations that you want to apply, and the risk that what it brings in, right? Any questions around the scope, clarity, limitations, risk will help you to optimize or define your context for this particular story. So what are we trying to achieve? What are the boundaries of this particular order listing, right? What is integration? How does it get the order details, right? What integrations I need to do? How do I get the integrated data, right? And limitations, what is the time constraint on this particular requirement, right? What is the data access? Do I have access? Do I have the data access to connect to the DB directly? How do I connect? So these are the risks and limitations and clarity and scope is the kind of questions you need to focus on. Next is the where part, right? Where is, we discussed, it's the data source and the data flow, right? So where is the data? Accordingly your prompt and your context will change. What's the data limitations, right? And next is leveraging the 5W strategy is the why question. Why focuses on the accuracy, clarity, outcome, and the users it is going to impact, right? So whether the questions that you ask, why are we trying to list the orders? What are we trying to achieve? Why this helps the end user, right? What level of accuracy? When it's accuracy, do you need only active orders or inactive orders? Do you need recently added orders? So all these things will help you to write the prompt in a more optimized way, which directly gives you responses which is 70, 80, maybe 90% accurate. And next is the when part. So when is more about schedule, triggers, who will call it, third party system is calling, is it event based? If it is event based, how do you push the message, how do you process the message? These questions is what, again, each of these questions is specific to your project, specific to the story. So you'll have to build the skill of asking the right questions. But when you say when, the trigger and the schedule, right? When do you want to trigger? Who is going to trigger? If it's event, where do I push the message? When do I push the message? When do I get the message? And how do I process it? right? So these are the questions I need to ask, in my prompt. And finally, the way, right? How technical side of it, what is the technology I need to use, what is the technology the prompt has to generate the code in, right? What is the UX requirement, what is the, if it's a backend, what is the backend APIs, how I'm going to deploy, right? So everything from technical side to the UX to any other information that helps you to implement. The ways could be your NuGet packages. How do I ensure the NuGet packages are used, which are valid, which are not having vulnerable issues? So all those things is going to the your context and the prompt for it to work, right? So going back, the when, where, why, ways, and what, right? These are the 5 questions you can quickly ask. Initially you may have only 2 questions for each of them, that's fine, but as you apply, as you see the response, as you apply, you will get the clarity. And if the project is something which is existing, you will be able to ask all these questions at a project level, create a context that you can use, right? So now finally, with this fine tuning, or with the 5W approach applied, and the details what we looked at, we can optimize the prompt that initially we saw, right? Can you generate me C# code to list down the orders, right? So how can we, if this 5W is applied, right? Now I have spent maybe more than 5 minutes to fine tune it for the purpose of, to showcase how it will work. But put a 5 minutes timer for your prompt, ask these 5 category of questions, create a context, create a prompt, try it out. Do it for few days, you will see the results improving in your prompt, and asking these questions will become kind of natural to you as you apply. Now, based on the 5 questions, 5 category of questions, the various questions I asked for this, first thing is, what is the context I came out with, right? The context talks specifically what is the user needs, the capability to view active orders, to monitor the status and take an informed decision, right? So, and what is the table that we want to do, what are the columns that typically this order needs to take, and what is the sorting and filtering order. Now this context may not be specific to the story, right? In this case it's specific to story, but now I can take this context, put into my master context file in the project and refer it in the future. So anywhere I'm referring to an order, automatically these 5 columns are considered if I put this into context. I'll cover that in the hands-on session. So whether you are talking technical, you're talking the columns to use, you're talking the tables to use, which references, the data consistency, security, packages, everything can go into the context file. And the key part is you have to keep the context up to date. Probably it is the PM or a Scrum Master who has to control or has to manage this as part of the sprint for a better productivity, right? So with this context, and this is the prompt that is now more detailed, right? Can you generate a C# code to show a list of active orders in the ASP.NET Core with so and so fields, and you sort it by status and use entity framework to connect, and you can also generate your order service. So here the prompt is more specific and than more generic, right? We are asking it to C# code using ASP.NET technology with these 5 columns, sorted by status, connect using entity framework, and generate me an order service. So it now, based on this prompt, Copilot understands this is an API based project, and I need to build a controller which internally calls order service, and order service calls the entity framework to get the code or to get the orders which has these 5 columns. So all these things, information is what Copilot understands when you give that context and this prompt, right? So if now let's try to use this prompt and the context in the live example and see how it works, right? So I'm going to quickly escape here. So the way, again, the approach which I have seen working for me, and most of the code I have written, is in every project I have basically create something called Copilot context.txt file, right? So this is the file that I maintain or update for every sprint, every story. I take a piece of my context and put into here as a master context file, right? So at this point I don't have anything, but this is the context. Let me copy this, right? Now this is a context at this point, right? So now next week when I write one more story, I may update this context with additional data, because I figured out a new data or new ways for to behave as a context, which will help me in my productivity. So I have a Copilot context file which is now updated every week, every sprint by the team, so that the context grows over a period of time and it becomes more relevant, which helps the prompt to be relevant, give relevant responses. Now, if I go back to the Copilot chat, right? So let me clear this, or we will keep this aside to compare, right? Now let me take the prompt as well. Now if I just paste this prompt, right, I may still not get the output that I can get, right? Because it doesn't know the context and it doesn't have the details. One is you can open up the file and hope it will pick up the file, right, and then generate the output, right, which may be better than what the first prompt we tried, right? So but what I typically do is I'll say referring to hash Copilot file. So I'm asking it to refer to the context file. So my every prompt begins with this word, refer to the context file, and then can you generate me the C# code, right? So right now I have 10 lines of context. Every week it increases, and over a period of time I have a context file which will give me the output as per the company standards, as per the project standards, as per the existing code of the project, right? So once I say referring to Copilot context, can you generate me the code which uses this? It will. Now let me go ahead and referring to Copilot context, can you generate the code, right? Now you will see it just doesn't generate one model and the program.cs file. It generates the model file, the DB context file, order service class, and the controller, which internally injects everything into the constructor, and including the changes I need to do in the startup.cs, right? Now if I compare this code, this has exactly the same fields I need in my orders list. I have the DB context which is linking to the DB database which I have given. I have the order service which is injecting the context and basic logic that I need to get the status, orders based on the status, and finally the controller which has the controller logic to inject the service and call the get active orders. And at the end you have the configure service we typically add to include the context file and the scoped order service into this, right? Now is this code you can take as it is and build? 70%, 60% you will be able to take. All I need to do now is start here. I'll create a model file, call it as order.cs. Let me go ahead and create. So right click, so you can basically, all you need to do is create the required classes, copy the code, paste it into the class, and you can continue like this. And then you can still continue to prompt and ask the same to go ahead and optimize the code, optimize the each and every code file that you have written to generate more specific. So using this prompt, right, using a basic concept of 5W, which doesn't need any complex understanding of prompts, Gen AI. All you need to know is how do I ask the right question and how do I generate the right response, right? So using this is what so what we have seen is we basically saw how we can use a 5W strategy to get a prompt which is more optimized, which will help you to generate a code which is 60, 70, 80% reusable in an actual code, and still you will have to spend the 30-40%, but you can, as you apply this, as you learn, as you do, you will get a lot more comfortable with this approach, and then improve your productivity, where 80-90% of the time all you use is Copilot and you get the responses that you need, right? And then so this is one, we're using .NET. Now technology doesn't matter, Java, Python, SQL, MySQL, any technology, you can apply the same strategy, create a prompt which then generates the code, right? So what you need to do next is, one, as I said, put up your comments, give your prompts, what you tried, how it didn't work, how it worked. Put a comment, I will respond to the comments, maybe if required through another video, for you to understand for your prompts how do you apply, what questions you ask, what is the details you ask, right? So feel free to put me a comment or message there, and then I will get back to you with that. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for upcoming videos. This is going to be an ongoing sessions on a weekly basis, focused on various technologies, starting with Copilot, but anything around skill that is needed for a techie to lead in a company, a team, or a project. With that, thank you. I look forward for comments and the answers and the details that you put, and I will respond to them with a video or the answers that you're looking for.